All right, real quick. Going to show my crew. We're all in attendance today. Everybody responded to the email. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We're going to go ahead and spend this meeting talking about hidden biases and the effect that they can have on our group development and our group cohesion overall. I'm sure that everybody has just kind of that general definition of what a bias is, but I'm going to read it from the book just so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page. So a bias is a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way that is considered unfair. Typically, we start to develop these biases when we're around the age of 3, and they'll start to show once we reach our middle childhood for the first time, and they also continue to grow from that middle childhood through adulthood. A lot of things influence this. There's individual influences, but there's also social influences. So a lot of what we learn is going to come from parents, guardians, family members just in general, religious figures. Those that you closely associate to will help to start forming biases, both consciously and unconsciously. Biases are kind of, if you want to look at it one way, it's categorizing people. So you take these characteristics, their social norms, and you start to put them in different bubbles. And that's, I apologize, we start putting positive attitudes towards our in-group, which is those that we are closely associated with, and then we start to put negative feelings towards our out-groups, or the ones that we think of generally as like different race, different creed, different sexual preference. All those different things can be biased. Start thinking those like ethnic jokes, the slurs. Those are all types of things that begin to emerge in our early childhood as far as things that we think are normal, but are actually detrimental to certain people, or people that are different than us. Biases are actually really hard to shake. Once we learn them, it's one of those things where it kind of gets ingrained, and it's hard to get out of those unless you start surrounding yourself with people from those different walks of life, so you could start to get different ideas of their background. So bias, I want to break it down in kind of the 3 actions that we normally see. There's going to be prejudice, there's going to be stereotypes, and there's also discrimination. Again, everybody has heard of these terms. I'm not going to try and insult the intelligence, but I do want to give definitions just so that we are aware of just what the book calls these. So a stereotype is an exaggerated belief, image, or distorted truth about a person or a group. These can, I will say at the beginning, all of these things can also be positive, but we're going to focus on all the negative aspects of these things just so that we can see their detriment to, like I said, development and cohesion within our group. They are, the big thing that I learned about this one in particular is that there's also the stereotype of omission. So a lot of what we see in media today, online, in the news, whatever, is a lot of that perpetuated white culture, where a lot of our people that we see living these good lives or winning awards, blah, 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 are typically white. That's one form of stereotype because they're omitting all the other people that exist in the world who have helped contribute and can help contribute through, various actions. So the big one for me to take away from this is that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Omission is one of the biggest ways that we can start stereotyping people. An example of a stereotype, there was actually a recent study that came out that said African American teens, before they go to school, are aware of the stereotype against them that they are dumber than other races. And so now imagine that, carrying that as a kid, coming into school, your new group, and how that would affect you even wanting to try and belong or being accepted in a school setting when you already think that you have, the rest of the competition has a leg up. But moving on, we'll go on to prejudices. A prejudice is an opinion, prejudgment, or attitude about a group or its individual members. This is a complex psychological process, and it starts with an attachment to the individual's in-group, or that close circle that we talked about. And once they're established, the prejudice is then aimed at those outgroups, or those different peoples, whether it's race, sexual preference, pretty much anything. A prejudice example would be all Muslims are terrorists. That's one thing that we see obviously a lot today too. One of our main prejudices, I would say, but that is an example of that. Finally, discrimination. It's behavior that treats people unequally because of their membership to a certain group. It typically begins with some sort of negative prejudice or stereotype, and it can range from all those comments that we were talking about to actual hate crimes. Think about also hiring practices. There were studies that came out that said when people turned in resumes with white names, they were called back more times than people that were that would hand in resumes with typically African American names. So discrimination is probably the final form of all of those actions, but it is the most hurtful, and one of those that can definitely affect how we are able to form or be a part of a cohesive team. So with all those things in mind, how do we test ourselves? How do we figure out if we have some of these subconscious, unconscious biases and we're, accidentally bringing them out into the world? The first thing is that we want to be inclusive. Keeping your group with folks from all different creeds, all different walks of life, just helps you get those differing opinions and helps you come to a better consensus as to how everybody feels, or maybe how the way you perpetuate yourself feels. So having all of those different walks of life to be in your group, it doesn't have to be close friends, but keeping an open mind when you're talking to people is a huge thing, and will definitely help get you a look on that other side of the fence when you're trying to come together as a team. Look inward. There's a lot of research that shows that changing your behavior can help change your beliefs. So having this, preconceived notion on XYZ, whether that's talking to somebody of a different race or sexuality, or it could be a plethora of things, you just want to make sure that you're looking inward to, if somebody says they don't like the way that you're talking to them or the way that you treated them in some way, you need to look at that and really ask yourself, like, well, what can I do to be better? Listening to those people, again, that's that be inclusive part of it. You want to make sure that you're getting those walks of life to help you along the way. And the last thing is that we actually have resources available. There's something called the implicit association test. And it's one that you can take, and it's going to actually help you identify certain biases that you may not even know that you have. And again, it's all this is all one thing. You want to keep an open mind after you take that test as to, well, it can't be me, like I have such and such friends, which is the classic scapegoat when you're trying to say that you're not a biased person. But again, having that good inward look is a really good way to make sure that you are keeping your biases in check if you have any, and ultimately eliminating those biases is the big thing here. We want to make sure that we're part of a fully cohesive and developed group, I would say. All right, well, that's going to conclude my portion of the meeting. I just wanted to take a quick moment of your time and go over hidden biases, the actions that can lead from hidden biases, and what we should do as individuals to make sure that we are not perpetuating bias, or if we do have some, how we can attack them and change our attitudes and our beliefs so that we can make a more cohesive and dynamic group that functions at a high level. I appreciate your guys' time, and I will get you guys on the next one.